Okay. So do you guys know the difference between physical activity and exercise? Do you guys know there's a difference? How many of you like count your steps? Awesome. I do too. Is that exercise? So some of you do know. It's just physical activity, right? Like when you go grocery shopping. Have you guys noticed when you go to Walmart, your step count just skyrockets? Right. It's always interesting to me because when I'm shopping at like Costco or whatever, I'm like, that did not feel like I did 2,000 steps, but you never know. I mean, when you're going back and forth and back and forth, forgetting something. So the human body is meant to labor. Our existence, our survival, our entire existence as humans was foraging and hunting and climbing and digging all every day, right? And so when we look at the impact of physical activity and exercise, everything functions better. Everything. All of your organ systems, your breathing, your lungs, your heart, your brain, your nervous system, all functions better when you're physically active compared to rotting, which how many of you rot in here? 100%. I know you all do. Exactly. I do too, right? Sometimes you need a break every so often. That's literally the opposite of what really the body is meant to do generally most days, right? So when we look at physical activity, you need to know those are different. It's different than exercise. When you're doing your laundry, that's considered physical activity. When you're walking through campus, that's physical activity, right? Um, when you're grocery shopping, when you're taking the dog for a walk, that's considered physical activity, okay? It's physical movement done in daily living, walking, gardening, folding laundry, etc. Exercise, however, I want you to think of the definition of being exercised. Exercise is not just like running on a treadmill. It is a term that describes physical, like strenuous physical activity, more strenuous, but it's really being stressed. When you're being exercised, you're being stressed, you're being strained. When you have a bungee and you pull on it, you're exercising that bungee. It's being under strain, right? And then it recoils. So when I think of exercise, I literally think of strain, putting something and putting it to its limit, trying to hit some type of limit or going past its norm, okay, in terms of strain. So we could say when you guys are coming up in the next couple weeks towards finals, you're going to be intellectually exercised. Okay. So when you think of exercise in terms of physical expenditure, think strain. In the world of fitness and health and wellness, exercise is intentional physical movement that is strenuous. It's intentionally done for the benefits of health and wellness, health and fitness. Okay. So this week so far, it's Wednesday. I've done quite a bit of physical activity. I took my dogs out on a walk. I'm going to check my steps right now. I went into the foothills. I chose the foothills because of so I'm at 8,700 steps from what I did this morning, right? I walked from my car here. I'm parked at the East Reserve, right? So that probably added a couple thousand steps. None of that is really physical activity, except the mountains or the foothills that I climbed. There was some intentional thought into that. I weight trained 2 days ago. That was intentional exercise. Did some pull-ups, did some squats, did some rotation work. Didn't take much. I wasn't, let me tell you right now, uh, I have in my history or in my experience with exercise, have done 100 times harder. That does not mean that what I did with my 2 sets of squats and my 3 sets of pull-ups, that wasn't enough. That wasn't adequate. It was totally adequate. I don't have to shred my entire system, destroy my bones, right? With the illusion that I'm going to make them better at 100%. I can go 70% and still get a lot of benefit. Okay. especially if at that even 60% of my highest capacity, even if I go to 60% of being exercised over long periods of time, that's more sustainable in my life, right? I'm more likely to do it. If I got to go 10 out of 10, say I get on my step mill, the gauntlet, and I got to be at level 10, I'm probably not going to do it because I have too much baggage in my life right now to handle. I have too much stress. So to actually put myself in a position in terms of exercise and being exercised at the 10 out of 10 would be inappropriate. I'm going to go to a 6 on that scale. It's way more achievable. I'm more likely to get in 10 minutes and my heart rate may be like at 160. It may not be at 180, right? And sustained at 180, but it could be 160 and be sustained. And I'm still going to get so much benefit from that. Okay. We're going to go more into this around how we adjust and adapt what exercise is. But how many of you, before I just said what I said, thought it's got to be a 10 out of 10 for it to matter, right? And that would be fight or flight thinking, all or nothing thinking. When I was your age, I was like, then why the hell would you do it? If you're not going to like go to exhaust, what's the point? Well, the point is that the goal is to have a relationship with exercise that is not miserable, absolute misery for some illusion you're getting healthier. So we're going to try to reframe what this is for you and make it more adaptable. Okay. So there are guidelines. These are recommendations. Now, just keep in mind, these recommendations I'm about to give you are bare minimums. Like, can we just do the bare minimum? Our culture, the way that our entire culture and system is structured, and our roads and cars and infrastructure is not made for physical activity. It's just not. Okay. Now we have things, let's say, like the green belt. How nice is that? How many of you love to get on the green belt? Me too. You're more likely to do it, but not everybody has the green belt or has access to a gym. How many of you would rather be on the green belt or on a treadmill? I would often love to be on a treadmill. It forces me to put an output to get more exercise. Whereas them days, I would rather be on the green belt, right? Sometimes you don't want social activity and to be like on your left, maybe you don't want to have to deal with people, right? So it needs to be dynamic. So let's talk about what are physical activity guidelines. 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate intensity physical activity. I want you to just calculate in your mind like your general average activity over the course of the last year. Do you meet that minimum of physical activity? Walking, not sitting or laying down. Do you meet that? Now, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise. So what is that? 3 hours a week, 30 minutes, 5 days a week. I would say, be honest with yourself. There's nothing wrong. You haven't done wrong if you don't get this, but the goal would be to hit some of these measures. So basically about 300 minutes a week of additional exercise, 5 hours a week, you get additional benefits. So if you get over 300, there are additional benefits. Now there is a point of diminishing returns. If you do too much, that sends a signal to the brain that you are in fight or flight. It sends a cortisol response, and you can get cortisol, like think of fatigue, right? People tend to, as they do too much exercise, they have higher histamine, higher inflammatory markers. They have less, they end up having issues with sleep. Their immune system starts to go down, right? So it actually sends the opposite signal. So ultimately, when you think about the signal that exercise or physical activity do to the brain, it sends a message that 1, you're safe. 2, you have shit to do. 3, you need the energy and activity. So the whole endocrine system kind of adjusts up When you demand more, it adjusts up to be able to accommodate. But there's a point again at which it's off balance with how much you're sleeping, your recovery. Recovery is really important, making sure your muscles can regenerate, that those macrophages and histamines that actually are really important for the recovery process can subside, right? So, and then let's add 2 times a week of weight training. Weight training becomes more and more important with age. It's important now because you have this quick twitch neuron, fast movements, and you can develop pathways and movement patterns, and you can improve your posture right now to where gravity over time doesn't necessarily affect your posture negatively. But how many of you actually meet these guidelines? I'm not, at least at this one, I'm not. Even though I spend a lot of time in a gym helping other people reach this, I don't necessarily get what I need, right? There's no harm in admitting that. I definitely get this because I have a very high functioning dog that needs to go out every day. So most Americans, okay, know this. How many of you know this? You didn't have to come to this class to think, wow, I didn't know we needed more physical activity. I learned that today in my class. How many of you actually learned something new just 2 seconds ago? None of you. You might have gotten a little more detail, like, oh, I didn't know it was 150 minutes or 300 total or plus. But you all know this. That doesn't do shit. Knowledge doesn't transfer. We know this. You can have the understanding, but the actual mechanisms by which the activity happens are largely psychosocial and structural. What do I mean by structural? Like, what structural things need to be in place for these recommendations to happen? How about access to a gym? To weight train, you have to have access to weights. What else do you need? Just to weight train twice a week.
Body that's capable of doing it.
Yeah, function. You have to have the physical capacity. What else?
The time.
You have to have time. Yes. You have to have space set out for that.
Motivation, discipline, good.
Motivation for sure. Discipline, we could argue around. What is that? What does it mean? What does it take? We'll bring that up in a little bit, but thank you for bringing that. How about knowledge of how to do it? Like, just because you have a dumbbell or a kettlebell or a machine there that's pin loaded, do you really know what it's doing and what the benefit is? That right there, knowledge, you can have knowledge, but if you don't have the weights, if you don't have access, let's just say going outside. What if you live in an environment that is dangerous, where you don't feel safe going out for a walk, or there's parts and places, in order for you to get to where you need to go, you got to go through an area that you might not feel safe. Like, there's a lot that goes into this. The time, don't forget money. If you weight training to some degree, I mean, there's a lot you can do with just your body weight. And I teach all of those things, but you kind of have to have some money to devote to this. But more than that, you have to have the bandwidth. The bandwidth. Do you know what I mean by having the bandwidth? What do you guys think that means? I mean, really consider if you were to give recommendations for exercise to someone who's depressed, who's really, really in a state of depression. What type of bandwidth do they have to go to a gym? It's not much. Depression is like, it takes all of your energy. Your whole endocrine system goes into a lower space. Motivation, you might be thinking people are judging you. Remember, those are people that are more anxious and depressed have cognitive distortions. What do you think they're thinking when they walk into a gym? Probably doing some social comparison. I look fat and ugly. I look at them, they're so happy and working out, and I don't know shit. And then they might go spiral, right? So is it as simple as having knowledge and knowing you need to do what you need to do? It's so much harder than that. It's so much more than that. 20.5% of adults in the United States meet these guidelines. Just 20%. So many, like, I think, what was it, 80% that actually knows? Most Americans, I don't have that actual stat. So this right here is super common. I did this last night, trying to do homework, right? But how many of you, especially during COVID, this is what you did for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, right? So physical inactivity is not meeting those minimum. So if you don't meet those minimums, you are considered physically inactive. Okay, so not that simplistic, but it is. Being sedentary is time spent while sitting and reclining. So once you kick those feet up and you sit like that for a long time, there's a lot of biological processes over hours that start to occur. Inflammation of the cells start to occur. They start to kind of weak. Remember that fueling mechanism that we have, all those fueling mechanisms, fat metabolism, glycolysis, all of that starts to kind of have an excess, and then you're not expending, and it can actually create degrees of inflammation or kind of an illness response. That has been found even when someone does quick bouts of exercise, let's say once in the morning or once at night. Being sedentary like this for hours and hours and hours of time actually promotes illness because it affects your immune system. So let's talk about the average amount of steps that people have, right, in the United States. Well, let's look at how they've been categorized, and just know that this is like a made-up thing. There are some studies, right, that this actually is about where they find benefit. Like, but I will tell you right now, this is also beneficial. There are days, let's just say I do exercise and I'm going to run the dogs. I ran the same amount of distance, okay, that I would walk, but my step count at the end of the day is in this zone. Whereas if I just walked it, I'd be in this zone. Does that make sense? So right now I'm at close to 8,200 steps for today so far. Had I run that distance, I would be way less because I'm taking less steps. So you're not getting a whole picture when you look at step count. You're not looking at the whole thing. You're not getting, well, what was your heart rate? What was your, did you tax your system? Granted, doing something, right? Even if all you're getting is 3,000 steps, don't disparage that. Add 100, So let's look at the different fitness components. So what we're talking about exercise, we're talking about these things, okay? Make sure that these, read that. So cardiorespiratory fitness, do you guys know what this is? What is it?
Vigorous cardio and
Breathing, yes. So breathing hard. So cardio is heart. Respiratory or respiratory would be your heart and lungs, your vascular system, like everything that pumps and flows the blood and oxygen throughout your entire system, your arteries, your veins, right? Your lungs, your lung capacity, the muscles around the ribs that help increase and improve your lung capacity. Just because of the muscle strength, right? Being able to suck air in and push it out. Muscular strength. Muscular strength is how intense your muscles can move shit. Okay. Endurance is the length of time that you can move shit. The length of time that you can have your heart rate at a very high rate, your blood flowing at a really intense rate, right? And flexibility, the mobility of your joints. And we're talking about your spine, your hips, your knees, your ankles, your toes, your feet, your hands, okay? Your neck rotation, your shoulder and your girdle mobility. Okay, so we're going to talk about the benefits. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bunch of things and I'm going to be pretty quickly go quick through this. This might be a little boring, but if this might give you some motivation. So what we know, evidence-based information on how being exercised impacts the brain. It reduces stress and improve mood. Why do you guys think? What is it about exercise that would actually impact that hedonic pleasure center of the brain? It's feedback. So fight or flight creates this, right, impulse of doing something, and actually doing something physically gives it feedback. It's like says, oh yeah, we fought. We fled. So exercise actually biologically can provide some degree of feedback. Now, does it tackle underlying problems? No. Do I recommend you handle a friendship issue or an argument by exercising? Hell no. You need to focus on the problem. You need to focus on your belonging. You need to focus on better communication. But temporarily, what exercise can do is help you think. It can improve the brain chemistry to think and process. It decreases risks of depression, same thing. However, this note right here does not take into account that your risk of depression might not have anything to do with your exercise. It might have to do with childhood trauma. It might have to do with the fact that you lost a job. And the risk of depression doesn't take, or exercise doesn't take away the potential of hardship or the reality that hardship can be depressing. Okay. And the other thing is people that are more active probably have things in place that make it so that they don't, like they're in a state of energy, being energized, that allows them to actually go exercise. Again, I don't know how many of you have actually been depressed. Let's just say in a spectrum of depression, right? Where life feels hopeless, pointless, where exercise actually, and the pressure to exercise may actually do more harm, right? Did you ever consider that actually suggesting exercise to someone who is already depressed may be a harmful suggestion? Have any of you ever experienced that? Where someone makes a recommendation that you hear, you know is right, but it actually promotes some degree of guilt or shame that you can't actually do it. It kind of feeds some of that self-talk that you're a loser and why can't you do it? I don't have the discipline. What's wrong with me? That an actual recommendation to exercise may actually be inappropriate. So I want to make sure that you recognize, even though there is science around this, that it may not be a good recommendation at that time. Okay. Can also decrease anxiety. This has everything to do with the impact of cortisol. Okay. Research has shown that when you do high intensity meaning about 80% of your VO2 max for at least 20 minutes, that there is a cortisol response that gives the brain feedback, and your general response to stress goes down because of, it's theorized in theory that it's creates a negative feedback loop. So when there's all this cortisol that you've stimulated through exercise, your brain responds differently to stress. You're less stimulated by stress. So your overall cortisol levels go down. Really awesome science out there with that. So it does improve concentration, blood flow to the brain, improves your blood pressure, right? Increases oxygen and nutrients to the brain, improves cognitive function. How many of you, when you exercise, start thinking, start being creative? Right. It's a creative process. That's what you're experiencing. Let's go quickly to the lungs. Improves respiratory capacity. Let's think about that for a minute. How does that happen? Yeah, the chemicals involved in the transport, right? However, does more exercise create even more and more and more linearly? There's a point at which your lungs can't get larger. Right? So what your capacity ultimately does improve, but this happens not because your capacity it gets bigger, it's your potential to use that capacity goes up. So we all have this capacity we all have roughly the same capacity, just so you know. It's kind of like the brain. Blood sugar is regulated. We're all the same in terms of brain. Generally, we all have the same lung capacity, but some of us are tapping in and hitting a bigger proportion of that capacity than others because of the muscles. So we actually are not improving the lungs so much as we're improving with exercise, the muscles that contract and release that kind of can flare the lungs out larger and recoil more to where we can get more air sucked in and released because of the diaphragm is a muscle that gets larger. The intercostals, those are the in between the lungs and the ribs ability to flex and retract, all of that gets bigger. Ultimately, that is what increases your respiratory capacity. Okay. And the chemical response, the ability to extract oxygen from the air at the, cellular level in the blood response to the lungs improves as well. So not only do people who exercise have kind of larger lung capacity, they're tapping more into that capacity, but their ability to get more oxygen with each breath improves. And of course, reduce risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, again, let's look at this from a broad perspective. When we talked about cardiovascular disease on Monday, it's kind of an ordeal, right? Like largely stress induced. So when you think about people that can exercise and that actually tap into exercise consistently to actually improve their lung capacity, to actually improve all of this stuff in here that changes that, we're probably talking about one, these people have access, right? Structurally, they have more access. Two, they probably have some degree of information, knowledge base. How many of you grew up playing sports? You had community, right? Your parents got you there. They didn't, you weren't stuck at home. So go into kind of the decades of what it's taken you just to get to this point to where you have reduced cardiovascular disease. Just go think of this complexity. This is just because you exercise doesn't necessarily mean that this is reduced. It's all of it. It's the fact that you have access, that you have knowledge, that you're not depressed, that you're actually in a state of higher demand, higher energy, more efficacy. So that's something really important. How many of you have at some time in your life avoided the gym because you didn't know what to do? You were scared to look like a dumbass. Right. That's so, but when you go, when you learn, you develop a degree of feeling like, oh, I can figure this out. So it helps with confidence, right? As an athlete, some of you who are athletes in here who have competed, efficacy is huge. Walking into the gym and being like, I'm going to kick your ass. That pride, inflated state that is huge and it's part of like success in competition requires that you have confidence, that you have some degree of like, I'm competent. I can learn how to do this. I'm going to go play pickleball and I'm going to kick everybody's ass once I get better. So that type of like ability to have fun with it takes some degree of efficacy. When people don't have that, when they are worried about being judged and shamed publicly or being seen as like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to look like, and I don't want to hurt myself, right? They're less likely to do these things. So be conscientious of yourself if that's you or in other people in the gym setting. We're moving quickly. Liver and pancreas. So let's talk about these two organs. On Monday, we discussed the importance of cholesterol from the liver, right? The liver does a ton of work in terms of regulating cholesterol. And your pancreas is an organ that is really important for blood sugar regulation, right? In terms of producing insulin. And again, the liver is also important in glycogen stores, that storage of fight or flight fuel that can break down and push sugar into the blood. So these two things increase the rate of metabolism. So your metabolic response, your digestive response with exercise is improved. Okay, so you're actually stimulating your general metabolic pathways. Especially that stored glycogen, your stored fight or flight response. Okay, so you're improving all of that. Reduces your risk of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Do you guys know what metabolic syndrome is? So let's just talk about syndrome quickly, and then I don't want to spend too much time or belabor this. Syndrome is a cluster of symptoms. Okay, so when you look at diagnoses, Stockholm syndrome, what that means essentially, we don't need to talk about the Stockholm part of it, but the syndrome means it's when there's a cluster of different things that when paired together, we can diagnose, right? So metabolic syndrome is a cluster of things, such as a body with more body fat, type 2 diabetes, endocrine disruption, such as, let's say, polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? All of these metabolic syndrome can be, again, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. These are a symptom and cluster of issues. Exercise can reduce that risk at an individual level. Does exercise get rid of the structural problems or the political issues that are going into how we function and as a community and how wealth is distributed and our poverty rates going up? No. Does it take away the high rising costs of tuition that might create stress that might have those issues? No. But when you do exercise, and hopefully when you leave today's lecture, you learn this, that this is the one thing you take from this. Exercise provides the fight-flight response that I'm going to actually fight and flee. So I'm going to have the nervous system in terms of stress, and it's going to go through that biological reaction. And when I go do something like go to the gym, go running, go punch go boxing, you're actually giving the feedback that you did fight and flee, and the whole body responds positively to that. Talk about your colon, your digestive tract. Exercise decreases the risk of colon cancer. Okay, now again, these are associations. So we can look at colon cancer and we can look at different factors like someone that doesn't get enough fiber. And we talked about that, right? Like, why would someone not get their fiber in? Maybe they can't afford food that's fibrous because it's way more expensive. Fiber is costly, right? In fruits, vegetables, it's costly in grains. So exercise may be this may be an indicator of wealth. You follow me? Okay. I know how this stuff can come across. Because when I went to school, no one talked about the kind of like the bigger picture. They were just like, you should be exercising, you dumb shits. Not realizing that there's a ton that goes into it. And this association may be measuring your wealth, actually. Okay, blood vessels. Increased level of the HDL cholesterol. We talked about that on Monday. HDL is what takes the lipids or fats in your bloodstream and it coats it with protein and takes it to the liver to be broken down and distributed. So it actually removes that globular potential of plaque buildup. Lowers your resting blood pressure. So blood pressure is how much blood is being pushed through your arteries and veins. Think of it like a hose. The smaller the hose, the more pressure, the bigger the hose, the less pressure. And so when we say lowers resting blood pressure, it would be better here to say it improves regulation. So I wish I could probably go back and change that. It actually improves the regulation of your blood pressure. Decreases atherosclerosis, so this is the hardening of the arteries. So that is a huge benefit of exercise. That has a lot to do with the HDL and LDL cholesterol and the impact that being highly active has on your improved metabolism. Improves circulation, pumps blood, pumps fluid throughout the body, helps you get rid of toxins in the body. Okay, breast health reduces the risk of breast cancer in women. Again, this could be measuring socioeconomic status, but nonetheless, people that do more exercise have less risk of breast cancer. But just because you exercise does not mean that you are not at risk. The heart decreases risk of heart disease. Again, that's that cardiovascular side of this. Strengthens the heart. It does improve the thickness of the walls and the strength of your heart and increases the volume of blood pumped by the heart or your stroke volume. So something to note, like what do you guys know the significance of resting heart rate? Some of you do. So your heart right now is beating, it's beating all the time. It's going to beat until the day you die, right? And how much blood comes out of each pump? Because that's what it is. It is a pump. It is pumping blood throughout your body to the lungs, okay? And if your heart is weaker, it doesn't pump as much blood, right? So a stronger heart pumps more blood. A weaker heart pumps less blood. And what if your need for blood is up here, right? Let's just say your need for blood is at a 10, okay? And your heart is weaker and it only pumps out a 5. So you're going to have to beat twice to get the 10, right? 5 and 5. Well, let's say someone has a really strong heart and each beat pumps out 10. Boom. So for the weaker person that has to pump twice to get that amount, the strong heart only pumps once. So who has a lower rate of a heartbeat? Yes, the stronger heart, just one beat gives you the 10 that you need. Whereas someone with a weaker heart has to pump twice. So they're pumping twice as fast, right? As the stronger heart. So that's how that works. That's where when we talk about the pump, your heartbeat, that says a lot about the blood volume coming through, how much is being pumped out. And so when you exercise, you improve that. So the amount of the ejection fraction of blood through coming out of the heart, through in the heart improves. It's way more. So a lower resting heart rate, now it doesn't mean like it's not linear, meaning if your heart rate is below 40, there's something wrong. You're going to die, right? It's too slow. Your body's not going to get as much blood. There is a range where we can say that is an excellently strong heart. Someone does a lot of cardiovascular exercise. So around, if you have a resting heart rate in the 50s, that's incredibly strong, right? After you wake up in the morning. 60 beats a minute, that's pretty strong. 65, you're kind of getting in the average in the norm. Me standing here, my heart rate's probably around 72, maybe 75 beats per minute. If I sit down, it's going to go back down, right? So it's an interesting thing to check. So when you go to the nurse or the doctors, they're going to check your heart rate. And if it's like at 90 beats per minute, that might not be a good sign because now it's pumping really fast at rest. Does that make sense? Bones. I geek out on this part right here. I am a big fan of bones and muscles. So your bone density increases. It's like the when you think about brittle bones, right? They break, crack. Whereas really strong bones have a lot of blood flow in their core and they're not easily broken. So it increases bone density, strengthens your bones, decreases the risk of osteoporosis. Joint health. Okay, so when we talk about joints, again, we're looking at like that ball and socket joint. We're looking at the joints between these vertebrae, the sacrum here, the knees, the ankles, every little, where bone and bone come together, okay? Exercise increases your range of motion. Now, we could argue that in some ways it can decrease it, but that's typically because you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? So the goal would be you do exercise that is dynamic enough that it actually it increases your range of motion. Now, if all you do, let's just say, is run, you could say that that person is going to have a very great range of motion in the area that their body's moving, but they may not outside of that stride length. So their hips may be actually getting tighter. Their knees and hamstrings may actually not be getting more flexible, right? But generally speaking, when you're physically active and exercise, it actually improves your range of motion compared to if you were sedentary. Reduces the pain and swelling of arthritis. I could also argue this is not true. I have so much arthritis from overexercise. But again, we're talking in relation to compared to being sedentary. You're going to actually improve the joint health with exercise. You're going to improve stability. What is that a measure of, you guys? I want you to think, what part of the body, what part of our systems is stability measuring? Just make a guess. Like the fact that I'm standing here right now, what's actually doing this? Something else. Yeah, but where are they getting that message? Did you have an answer? Your nervous system, my brain literally is doing this for me. My nervous system right now is doing this. And of course, my ligaments, my joints, my tendons, right? All that is working in this amazing, magnificent miracle that I'm actually standing upright. It's honestly miraculous that I'm not doing this, it's doing it for me. It's like kind of geeky. So let's talk about those muscles. So exercise actually stimulates the muscles. It stimulates the nervous system, so those can help your muscles get thicker and stronger. Helps with, tone. Tone, when you hear of tone, a lot of people think, oh, it's the look. No. It's the actual electrical wiring to the brain that creates a signal. So this should be strength and signaling, okay? Improves muscle endurance. So how long you can stand, right? How long can you row? How long can you walk the dogs, right? How long can you last? And improve posture, which we're going to get into next week. What that means. And you decrease joint degradation. So something to consider, and you are going to hear this when we get to our posture lecture, gravity is constant. I'm being shoved into the ground right now. Like there's a pressure on me to go down. We're used to it, right? So we're like, ooh, but I'm being pushed. You're all being pushed down. And over time, it's like bending, taking a stick, right? And a vertical stick can handle a lot, but let's just say the stick starts to bend. What happens to that stick is it starts to curve, it starts to bend. And when you do exercise, when you strengthen the spine muscles, your glutes, when you strengthen, your entire pelvis wrapped around, I'm going to be able to stand longer and I'm going to be standing more upright, which reduces the degradation down into my knees and my feet. So when you have improved posture because of more activity, you reduce the rate and risk of arthritis. However, if you do too much, it actually has diminished returns. Now, the nervous system, to me, this is the key. It's the brain, it's the signaling pathway. When you are active and you're doing things like playing basketball or throwing a frisbee or playing pickleball or whatever the hell you're doing, skiing, you are improving the speed at which your brain sends signals to the muscles, to the joints, to the body. And it's something that you're all taking for granted right now. If I could be 22, holy shit, I would feel very different than I do today, right? You are over time going to lose that speed. There's really nothing you can do about it except exercise, right? To maintain a degree of speed from the brain to the foot. So I want you to think about yourself as a child and the experience. How many of you have been able to go to a creek and you just run across it, right? You just hop, skip, step, boom, there's a log, you jump, and you're like, yay, Power Rangers go, right? That type of play never took thought. Now, if I were to do that now, I could, because I do things for that, but I would be like, holy shit, I might not respond or have that reaction time. I'm not so confident that I'm not going to fall flat on my face that I did 20 years ago when I would just not even think. My brain is calculating shit faster. It's responding faster. I might slip and catch myself faster and I'm not as fast, right? And give me 10, 20 more years I might fall flat on my face and it would be funny and hope I don't get hurt. So improves your balance, speeds up reaction time, improves your sense of body space, space and awareness in space, improve body location awareness. This is called, does anybody know what this word that describes this is? Excellent. And what about that one? Kinesthetic sense. Yeah. You don't need to know this, but there are terms like proprioception means like I can tell my arm is out here and I don't have to see it, but I know my arm is up and out, right? I know this foot is turned out. Kinesthetic sense is, and that when you go up the stairs, like when I stand here, I felt my glute stabilize, my medius stabilize, I can feel my quad, I can feel my body, I know what this muscle is feeling, I have an awareness of that muscle. That goes away. I'm telling you, all right now, you're taking it for granted. You walk up some stairs, you're like, boom, look at that booty. You feel your quads, right? It feels good to have that muscle awareness, that kinesthetic sense. It goes away. I have clients, I have to go, you're gonna think here. I have to even say words. You're gonna go right in from the glute to the quad, glute, quad. I'm screaming at them to be focusing on it because they don't even feel it anymore. And then it comes back. And they're like, oh my God, Robin, you're right. I can feel it. And I was like, yeah, boom. That is very neurological. Okay. Functional joint movement patterns are improved. So what that means, right? So, and we'll go more into this next week. If I'm walking, my feet are turned out. This is not functional. This is actually dysfunctional. Because we're not meant to walk like this, right? When you exercise more, the muscles that turn the head of the femur in become more active, and you're more likely to walk with your feet pointing forward. Okay? So when you're less active, the joints kind of become less stabilized. More activity, especially with specific types of training, which is where we're going to talk about in posture, you can start actually positioning your bones and the movement pattern to be more functional or more adaptive to our environment. With your feet turned out, you're more likely to tear an ACL because your quads are misfiring. So functional joint, that's what functional means, movement patterns. This is something you'll hear if you go to physical therapy. How many of you have been to physical therapy? They're going to talk about that. What's the pattern that your body is doing? There is an actual science to that. Your immune system. When you exercise, it pumps your lymphatic system. So there's lymph nodes in your armpits and your hips, behind, all over the body. And those lymph nodes are very important for circulating and pumping out toxins that we ingest and breathe and pass through the skin. Exercise helps those things pump, pushes things out, boosts your immune system. Now, let's talk about this immune response here. When you're exercising super high intense, let's say you do some weight training and you blasted your muscles and you are so sore. Your immune system is actually suppressed. Okay. This is the after effect. The after effect is a stronger immune system. Okay. So there's temporary autoimmune response, macrophage, cytokines, all of the inflammation that happens. And the kind of the free radical buildup puts you in a position to be compromised when you weight train really heavy, or you're doing like if you go run Roby Creek, you're going to probably get sick, right? Because of the immunosuppression. However, it rebounds. It ends up being stronger generally. So people who are more consistent with exercise tend to have stronger immune response. Reduces inflammatory markers. Keep in mind that inflammatory markers go up right after you exercise, especially if there's muscle damage. So it's true, your general inflammation does go down, but I would assume, because it goes up right after, that has a lot to do with that cortisol response, because inflammation is not just at muscle tear. It's not just when you cut yourself, because this response, this immune response and inflammatory response to exercise is an actual reparative response. Okay. But your general baseline then it can be less. And again, I think it has a lot to do with stress reduction from psychological benefits. And reduce risk of cancer. Again, this has a lot of other things. When we talk about reducing the risk of cancer with exercise, there's a lot that goes into that. Okay. Like general well-being, access to resources, right? Access to higher quality nutrition because you can afford it. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. I think we're getting close here to finishing this part. Improvements to mental health. It improves your physical confidence, right? That's what I was talking about earlier about efficacy. That the more you do, the more you start to feel confident in your body, to feel like, oh, I can do this. I can have pain tolerance. That is something also that I think is worth discussing is when someone doesn't do very much activity or didn't have the maybe the option of playing sports or getting physical education, like you didn't do PE classes, is you don't necessarily learn what it feels like to be in pain, physically in pain. I'm not saying that you should be in pain, but being exercised and strained can be painful, right? Like, I remember when I first learned weight training, when I was a sophomore in high school. Okay. And I was just kind of like, someone had said, hey, there's this friend that has a gym in their basement. You want to weight train? And I was like, sure. And I remember what it felt like. And you don't know how hard to push. You're just pushing, right? A default. And you don't know, like, well, how hard should I push? Or how much should I kick? And you have to have more and more weight to actually feel the resistance to pushing something really heavy to get a sense of how much you can push and how heavy you can resist and what does it take to where you're like, oh, I'm failing at this weight lift. That builds confidence, to be honest with you. The more you do something, the more confident you get in understanding how to push and pull, how hard to run, how long can you last? What does it feel like to hit muscle failure? I've actually hit muscle failure. It's really crappy. What does lactic acid feel like? Because it feels like fire ants. Feels like you're on fire. And can you experience that and not be like, oh my God, it hurts? Can you just witness it? Right. So when I train people, especially people who don't have experience, I have to help them understand, like, oh yeah, what you're feeling is this kind of acid byproduct, and it's going to make it feel like your arms are numb. And it might feel like fire ants. You feel like fire ants. Oh yeah. And I have to help them like relax and actually observe it rather than be scared of it because it's kind of painful. Okay, so when I talk about it improves physical confidence, part of that is that efficacy. Like, oh yeah, I can do hard things. Again, it's feedback for the fight response. You actually get to fight without actually fighting, and your brain responds positively to that. A sense of accomplishment, like I actually did something today. And again, there is the downside to that. There's a downside to this. That when your sense of accomplishment requires, let's say you do 15,000 steps. Well, what happens when you only get 10,000 steps? Now you feel like shit because your default might have been set at 15,000 steps, which is a lot of steps. Right? So this part, I would say, has some downsides. Yeah, it can help you feel good about yourself, like you did something, but it can actually be harmful if that becomes the default. Because then when life gets stressful, and you don't have the bandwidth, you might then feel bad about yourself, not realizing that actually you probably shouldn't exercise because you don't have the bandwidth. Improves cognition, we talked about that, and it also improves, shows improvement in dementia and Alzheimer's, and that is awesome. And stress tolerance. So let's get into this a little bit more personalized around how this should work. So I've been my undergraduate degree is in exercise science. My master's of science is in kinesiology. I have been in the personal training industry since 1997, before you guys were born. I started helping people with their activity and fitness and their exercise and teaching weight training and teaching posture and teaching pregnant women as a one-on-one private personal trainer a long time ago, okay? And I'm here to tell you that your relationship with exercise is going to change. It's going to be different. It evolves a lot. What doesn't evolve is you have the same ball and socket joints in your hips, that's the same. Knees are the same, it's tongue and groove joint, right? We're bipedal, that ain't gonna change, at least you hope it doesn't, right? It's your relationship to it will change. So I want you to imagine those of you who have working legs in here, which is everybody, what would happen to your relationship with exercise if you were wheelchair bound? Would it change? Hey. It would change, but would it really though? Would my relationship, how I relate to exercise change? If I didn't have legs? I think the mechanisms by which I get exercise would change, but I don't think my relationship might change in terms of I feel good, I like to do it, I'm just gonna find other ways to do it. Right, so the goal would be that if you end up with some physical ailment, that your relationship with exercise does not change. That would be the goal, that you still have a relationship. You just might have different means to the end. Okay. All bodies need regular physical activity. Even if you don't have legs. Or you lose an arm. Your body still wants the fitness of it all. So you need to find what works for your body and your life circumstances. You could be fully able-bodied, but what if you're psychologically impaired? How would you recommend people exercise if they had some type of psychological impairment? Would it be different than what you would recommend to someone who is totally in a space of wellness, like their balance? It would be different. I will tell you that right now. It is like a physical need. Exercise is like a physical need. It is like brushing your teeth. It is like sleeping. But it needs to be something that is dynamic, that can expand, that can contract, that you can change, that you can evolve, that you're not stuck in a fixed way of doing it, that you don't have to run 10 miles, that you can actually just go do an elliptical for 20 minutes. Do you really have to get on the step mill level 10 for an hour and burn 2,000? No. Like, it's not, that's fixed and rigid. When exercise becomes fixed and rigid, your probability of actually doing it goes down, okay? So what are you gonna do? You know, as you guys mature, as you become middle-aged and you start to have life and a job and kids and drama and parents and divorcing and all sorts of chaos and benefits and travel and money or whatever. What are you gonna do when you work full-time? You got a full-time job. Would it change? How would your relationship with exercise change? When you have children or pets that have needs and time, how are you going to fit that in on top of the full-time job? What if you need help with what if you need to help as a caretaker for an ailing family member on top of your job, on top of your pet that needs to be taken care of? Let's not forget, you just twisted your ankle the other day stepping on a toy. Now your ankle hurts. Are you going to be able to run now? How are you going to adapt? What are you going to do when you lose your job? You don't have a job and all of a sudden your funds are down and you have bills to pay. Did you guys get an immediate moment of like, oh, how is that going to work? How are you going to feel motivated? What changes in terms of your relationship with your exercise, your experience? What if you experience a serious illness where you got to be on, some type of medication that makes your metabolism slow down or your thyroid slow down and your energy goes down? What if you have a catastrophic injury? How are you going to adapt so that your relationship with exercise stays the same, even though the modes are different? What do you do when in all of these circumstances, exercise seems too much? How many of you have felt that before? Okay, if you haven't, you're going to. It's, I will tell you, when I was your age and I was kind of like, I would always make exercise important. That's literally probably how I sounded. I was pretty naive, right? Pretty naive to think that. When I was taking care of my mom with brain cancer during the last few months of her life, hell no. I had so much to do. I was helping her. I was doing the yard work. My activity level was really high, but I just didn't have it. I didn't have it in me. So I did not weight train or do any exercise. I did a lot of yard work, a lot of activity, but I just had to pause it. That's okay. Okay, so this is the key, right? It's adapting on some level. It's being able to have these big ebbs and flows, high priority, low priority. In low priority situations, what can you do? Maybe I'm not gonna go for an hour and a half hike, but I could stay home and do a YouTube video on doing some yoga that might help with my lower back pain. I've got options. You guys have YouTube, right? You can do a whole Pilates mat session with that. Just throwing that out there, given the energy. Find exercise that matches what is physically needed. That does not add too much stress. Okay, so I would say when exercising requires you have stress to give, you have room for more stress. Okay, so when you think about your stress load, do you have room to add more stress? Because exercise is meant to be stressful. Exercise. It's supposed to be stressful, right? Do you have room? And how much room do you have? Sometimes you're like, hell yes, let's go. I want to drip with sweat. That means you're probably doing pretty good, right? When someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to start, I need a trainer. Most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, the people that come for me, one, can afford it. My rates are on my website. I do not hide that shit. So if they're asking for my help, I already know they can afford it. That's good, right? Two, they are in a good place emotionally. Usually people reach out for training when they finally have room for the stress in their life. Their mom isn't dying. They didn't just get divorced, right? They're usually starting to feel better about whatever drama they were in. It usually is a sign that the sun is starting to shine in their life. And the first thing I say, and usually people are like, oh my God, you're right. I say, congratulations, you must be doing really well. They're usually like, what? They assume I'm going to be like, yeah, you kind of suck. I know you've been guilty because you haven't been exercising and you should. So good for you for finally getting off your ass to have the discipline to work out. That's what they think I'm going to say. Because that's what they probably feel inside. But what I say is, hey, this is super great. I'm so glad. You must be in a really good place. Let's just ease into this and figure out what helps you feel good. I want you coming out of this gym feeling good. And guess what? Every time I work out with them, I'm not working out. Every time I help them work out and I formulate what they're going to do, I ask, tell me how you feel today. I don't tell them what I think they're going to do. I have no idea what I'm going to have them do. And I know some of you in kinesiology were told to do something different, but I've been doing this for almost 25 plus years. I do not have a plan when I go in with clients. The first thing I ask is, tell me how you're feeling. What is matching? Do you want, and I get the Rolodex, do you want to feel sweaty? Do you want to feel stretched? Do you want to just sit around? Because we can do that. We'll just do leg extensions, leg press, chest press on this machine. We don't have to do free weights. I'm literally just speaking with their body, and then I like work out, right? You're going to get into fitness training or personal training. You don't start that way. You start with, here's what I know, and I will make you do what I know. And you will evolve, you will mature. And you start to say, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to listen to you first And then I have all the Rolodex of the years and years of training and exercises and different options. And then I'm going to apply that to your situation. I've had clients come in and they're fuming. The worst day. They're so mad. And my suggestion typically is we're gonna do bench press. Ooh, and we're gonna go heavy. Right? We're gonna fight. I'm gonna try to create some fight. I'm gonna put them in the leg press and we're gonna put plates and plates on. So they can feel the weight, right? But I'm gonna talk to them. Are you anxious? If they're anxious, okay, let's get on the step now. Just let's go. You need to run. We gotta do something that's going to flee. You're anxious. You're angry, we're gonna do something to fight. If you're feeling like underwhelmed, well then I'm gonna ease into it and I'm gonna figure it out as we go. So find out what does not add too much stress, but also what type of stress do they want? Because it's all stressful. Okay, if you're angry, pump some iron. If you're anxious, do high intensity cardio. All of this is gonna be in a quiz for in-class participation, not right now, but pay attention to this. If you're angry, heavy weight training, it really helps. With whatever music that gets you like in fight mode, fight. Don't just do it at the gym. Again, anxious, high intensity cardio, sometimes that kind of electricity from the heart rate can make a huge impact. If you're tired, do some yoga, match it. So when someone comes in to the gym and they're like, I'm so tired, first thing I think is we're gonna stretch. I'm gonna do like deadlifts, and we're gonna do wide leg, and we're gonna do all sorts of stretch and shit. If you're stressed, go for a walk. Just do something mindless, something that doesn't require you think at all. So in the gym, this is when I have them sit and do leg extensions. Because they don't have to think, they don't have to like do anything, it matches, and I'm telling you, I'm a master. This is why I have a good business. Go for a walk, even if it's nice, even if it's raining. How many of you see this and go, ooh, yeah. I do too. I love it. This can be healing. Get in nature, get in space, get in the complexity outside of your own head. Bored, enlist in mentally challenging, competitive things. How many of you boulder? That is meditative for a lot of people. So if you're bored, do something challenging that makes you think, that makes you connect with your body a little bit more. There's more strategy involved. It can be really rewarding. If you need friends, go into the YMCA Noon Hoops and just sit there and listen and hang out. How many of you guys have been to Noon Hoops at the YMCA downtown? It's really fun. Find a sport. You guys have it here at VSU. You have the rec center. There's things for you to do to actually get engaged in social things. Having a hard time getting started? Small steps. So we'll leave you with this. All you gotta do is 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. Don't do more than that. Start with 10 minutes. If you do 10 minutes every day of whatever it is, that's pretty good. It adds up. I do yoga once a week. No more than that. Period. It's working. If I told myself I have to do 2 or 3, I'd be failing, but I don't. Once a week. So take small steps. All right. Have a good weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday and we will go over posture and all sorts of fun stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gonna work. Like in the morning. Yeah, so when you first started doing posting training.